"Sir, she's too weak to beg," the little girl said. Then the lonely rancher looked into his barn and froze. Wyoming Territory, 1872. The first snow came early that year, quiet, relentless. It buried the high plains in silence, so thick even the wind's howl seemed distant. On the edge of a forgotten prairie, Samuel Holloway fastened the last strand of barbed wire on his southern fence. His gloves stiff with frost, he turned to head back when a faint knock cut through the wind. Once then again, not the house door, the old side gate. He approached slowly, hand near his revolver. No one came this far out without reason. A little girl stood there, maybe 7. Her tangled hair was stiff with ice. She clutched a patchwork blanket around her shoulders, the other hand hidden behind her. Her voice barely rose above the wind. "Sir, she's too weak to beg." Samuel stopped. Her tone, flat, calm, too quiet for a child, unsettled him. "Who's too weak?" She pointed toward the barn. "Mama, she told me not to knock, but she fell asleep in the straw, and the baby's cold." Samuel's stomach turned. He hadn't let anyone into that barn since he buried his horse, since Clara. But the girl wasn't shaking like a child should. She was still too still. He moved past her, hand hovering near his holster. As he opened the barn door, snow swirled inside like smoke. At first, only shadows, then a shape stirred in the far corner. A woman curled into a nest of hay and torn cloth, skin pale, hair black, and braided in the Apache style. One arm wrapped tightly around a bundle, the other trembled. The baby whimpered. Samuel froze. There was blood. Not much, but enough to say the child had come recently, right here on his land. The woman's eyes flickered. Open, fever-glazed. She stared at him without fear. Just resignation. "I told her we should keep walking," the girl said behind him. "But Mama couldn't. The baby came too fast. We didn't mean to steal, just needed somewhere out of the wind." Samuel knelt, the ache in his knees nothing compared to the throb in his chest. The woman's wrist shifted. He saw inked symbols. Apache tribal marks. His pulse quickened. He'd seen those before. "Red Creek, 5 years ago." "You're Apache," he said. She nodded faintly. His gut twisted. Every part of him said, "Turn around. Let them be. Let winter do its work." Then the baby whimpered again. He reached to lift the edge of the blanket. The infant's lips were blue, eyes shut tight, skin puckered from cold. "Damn it," he muttered. He stood. "Stay here." The girl nodded. Inside his cabin, he lit the stove, filled the kettle, and grabbed the wool blanket from his bed. When he returned, the girl was still beside her mother, guarding like a soldier. He handed her the blanket, wrapped the baby tighter. "Good. Now, help me move your mama." She looked up, confused. "Are you mad?" "I'm not kind enough to be mad," he said. "But I'm not cruel enough to let her die." O lifted the woman, lighter than he expected, and carried her into the warmth. Near the stove, he laid her down. Gently, he turned to the girl. "Your name?" "Lena." "And hers?" "My mama's name is Nita." Samuel looked at the woman, Nita, her lips moving, whispering in a language he didn't know. And for the first time in years, the silence in his home was broken. Not by grief, but by the soft, fragile cry of life. The wind howled louder as Samuel stood just outside the barn door. Snow blowing sideways across the field like smoke from a battlefield. He could still hear the baby's faint cry inside, the hiccuping whimper of a newborn trying to live in a world too cold, too cruel. He closed the barn door gently, stepped back, and stared at it as if it were a tomb. Apache, his fists clenched, even in the warmth of his gloves. Clara had not screamed when the arrow struck her. She had looked at him, confused, more than afraid, and then collapsed beside the corral. One minute they were laughing about burned beans. The next, she was gone. The blood soaked into the dirt like it had always been there. It had been 5 years. 5 winters without her. 5 winters waking to silence. No smell of coffee, no soft humming, just wind and wood and the ghosts that rattled the windows. And now they were back. Apache in his barn on his land. Samuel turned away and walked toward the house. Every step was an argument between instinct and decency. Let them be. Let the cold take what the arrows had not. That woman's tribe had taken Clara. What right did they have to crawl back now? He reached the porch. His hand touched the doorknob. The wind paused. Hey, silence. And in that silence, he remembered what else he had seen. Not the tattoo on the woman's wrist, but the girl's bare feet in the snow. The way she did not cry. The way she stood between her mother and the door. He closed his eyes. The girl was starving. Her ribs had shown through her dress. And the baby's cries had already begun to thin out like thread. Samuel opened the door, but did not go in. Instead, he turned, walked back down the steps, crossed the yard, and pushed into the barn again. The girl was still standing beside her mother, her little hands pressed around the baby as if she could give it warmth by will alone. I said to stay here, he muttered. She looked up, startled. I did. We didn't move. He took a breath. I meant never. Mine. Samuel moved to the far side of the barn to the storage room that had once been used by ranch hands in the cattle days. It was empty now except for some broken crates and a pile of old hay. He cleared a space quickly, grunting as he dragged a narrow cot frame from the wall. Bring her here, he said. The girl hesitated. Mama cannot walk. Then help me carry her. They lifted Nita together. Samuel under her shoulders, the girl holding the baby and guiding her mother's legs. The woman moaned once, but did not wake. They laid her on the cot. He fetched a kettle, filled it from the pump, and lit the small iron stove in the corner. The barn room warmed slowly, the smell of hay turning to that of scorched iron and steam. Samuel handed the girl a tin bowl. Mash this up, he said, tossing in dried oats, a pinch of salt, and a sliver of jerky. Stir. Let it thicken. She obeyed without a word. As the kettle began to hiss, Samuel stood over the mother and watched her chest rise and fall. Shallow, weak. She had maybe a day, 2 at best. He rubbed a hand over his face. If she dies, he murmured, barely hearing himself over the wind. At least the children might live. The girl turned. What did you say? Nothing. He replied quickly, then softer. What is the baby's name? Coho, she whispered. He looked at her startled. That is a Comanche name. She nodded. Mama said it means strong heart. Samuel crouched by the stove, tossing in another stick of wood. The flames crackled, warm and hungry. So much had been burned between their peoples, entire towns, entire families. But maybe, just maybe, this room would hold something else. Not peace, not yet, but warmth. The wind eased up by morning, leaving behind a pale, broken silence and drifts of snow against the barn walls. Inside the storage room, the warmth from the iron stove had turned the frost to mist on the windows. Samuel leaned against the far post, arms crossed, watching as the steam curled off a bowl of porridge beside the cot. The baby slept. The little girl, Lena, sat curled near her mother's side, half awake but alert. Samuel had not slept. Nita stirred. Her fingers twitched beneath the blanket, her lips parted. She inhaled slowly as though it hurt to breathe. Samuel stepped forward instinctively. Her eyes opened, dark, hollow with fever, but lucid. She blinked once, disoriented, then her gaze settled on him, sharp despite her weakness. Her grip tightened around the infant. I'm not going to hurt you, Samuel said. Her brow furrowed. She glanced around, saw the warmth, the food, the cot, and her daughter safe. She whispered something in a patchy voice, rasping. Then she tried to sit up. Don't, he said quickly. You're not strong enough. Nita obeyed, though her jaw set in defiance. Who are you? Samuel Holloway, Brancher. This is my land. Her eyes scanned the room again. You found us. He nodded. Your daughter did. She looked over at Lena, whose small hand still rested on her leg. Thank you, she whispered. Her voice cracked, and she winced. Samuel grabbed a tin cup from the stove, poured warm water into it, and handed it to her. She took it slowly, her fingers trembling. As she drank, he knelt beside the cot. That was when he saw it. Her blanket had slipped. On her wrist, half hidden by the folds, was an inked symbol, faded but unmistakable. 2. Crossing arrows beneath the sun, the tribal mark of the Mescaro Apache. But not just any mark. It was the seal of Waya's bloodline. Samuel's breath caught in his throat. Waya, the war chief, the one who had led the raids through Red Creek, who held off an entire cavalry unit with just 30 men, the one they ambushed at Bitter Ridge, the one Samuel had seen fall. You were his wife, he said, eyes fixed on the mark. Nita looked at him, said nothing, but the quiet in the room was confirmation enough. Samuel rose to his feet, backing away slowly. You are Wee's widow. She did not deny it. Her eyes never left his. You should not be here, he said coldly. You should be far from this place. I tried, she whispered, but the child came too early. We were turned away from every trading post. We slept in dry riverbeds. My son was born in snow. Samuel's hands curled into fists. I fought in the Bitter Ridge campaign, he said. Knitted his eyes flickered. I know. He froze. You. How? She looked at him, her voice steadier now, despite the weakness. You were the one who let the women leave. Samuel stared at her, stunned. I saw you, she said. When the flames rose and the gunfire stopped, you stood at the edge of the camp, blood on your face. You looked at me and turned away. That spared my life. He said nothing. I was with child then too, she added quietly. But that child did not live. I buried her before dawn. The silence between them stretched long and thin. Nita reached for the baby beside her, gently adjusted the cloth covering his chest. I do not hate you, Samuel Holloway, she said. I buried hate when I buried we. Hate would have killed me long before the cold did. He looked at her, really looked. This was not the fierce, painted warrior woman he had pictured. This was someone broken and rebuilt. Someone who had carried grief as long as he had. What is your name? He asked finally. Nita. He nodded slowly. She reached out a thin hand and touched his wrist. You saved me once. Now I have no place to go. No people left. But I remember your eyes from that day. You were tired of killing, too. Samuel swallowed hard. I was, he admitted. Still am. Outside, the wind picked up again, sweeping against the barn like a restless spirit. But inside, by the fire, something else settled. Not peace. Not yet, but understanding. Nita leaned back slowly, her head resting against the cot's frame. You do not have to forgive what happened, she whispered. But I do not ask for forgiveness. Only a place to rest until I can walk again. He said nothing for a long while. Then you can stay for now. She closed her eyes. And for the first time Samuel was not thinking of Clara. He was thinking of the woman before him, of Waya, of the life spared, and the one beginning again in his barn with the cry of a child born in snow. The days slipped by in a rhythm of cold wind and cautious silence. Snow fell often now, piling against the barn and burying the fences in drifts. The world outside narrowed to a few chores and the creak of boots on frozen earth. Inside, life adjusted. Samuel found himself listening for things he never used to notice. The slow crackle of the stove, the soft rustle of Nita's blanket. As she turned in the cot, the tender lilt of her voice when she sang in Apache. It was not a language he understood, but the sound carried weight. History. Lullabies soaked in old sorrow. The baby coo was growing stronger. His cries had gone from whimpers to healthy wails. Lena would hush him with the confidence of a girl twice her age, wrapping him snug and whispering stories as if she had once been a mother herself. Samuel watched all of it quietly, never quite entering their circle, but always near its edge. One night, after splitting logs by moonlight, he returned to the barn with arms full of kindling. He paused at the door. Nidida was humming, rocking the baby gently in her arms. Her long black hair was unbound, falling over one shoulder like a curtain of midnight. Her eyes were half closed, tired but calm. She did not see him. He stood for a moment, letting the music seep into the cracks of his soul. He stepped in, sat the wood beside the stove. That song, what is it? A prayer, she said. To the wind. Does it work? She gave a faint smile. Sometimes in the days that followed, she began to move more, helping Lena sweep, mending the torn sleeve of Samuel's coat, rewrapping the resins on his saddle with practiced hands. Once he caught her chopping wood before dawn, her frame still frail, but her grip steady. You should not be doing that, he scolded. She shrugged. I have chopped worse things. They said little, but something passed between them. A mutual rhythm, shared silence, respect earned not through words, but by the way. They moved through the same cold, the same chores, the same flickering fire. Light. One evening after supper, such as it was, boiled beans and cornmeal, Lena curled near the stove, Ku asleep in her lap. The barn was warm, a rare thing. Samuel leaned back in his chair, staring into the fire. Did you ever lose someone? Lena asked suddenly, her voice small but clear. The question hung in the air like smoke. He did not answer at first, then slowly. Yes, my wife Clara. Lena tilted her head. Was she pretty? Samuel nodded. She was strong, brave. She sang off-key and loved rainstorms. And she always burned the biscuits. Nidida looked up from her sewing. How did she die? Lena asked. Samuel's jaw tightened. Arrowed during a raid. Lena looked down. I am sorry. Samuel gave a soft grunt, more breath than sound. It was a long time ago. He stood, crossed the room, tossed another log into the stove. As he turned, he nearly stumbled. Nita was beside him. Before he could speak, she reached up and placed a hand gently against his chest. Her touch was light, but firm, centered over his heart. The dead feel no pain, she whispered. But the living, we carry every cut. He looked at her, startled. Her eyes met his, dark and steady. She did not apologize. She did not flinch. And in that moment, he realized she was not just surviving here. She was seeing him, the man beneath the coat, beneath the fence posts and firewood and gun holster. He stepped back slightly, unsure. She returned to her sewing. The fire crackled between them. That night, as he lay on his cot in the main house, Samuel stared at the ceiling for a long time, hearing her voice in his mind. Soft, steady, unapologetically real. The living carry every cut. He closed his eyes and for the first time in years did not dream of Clara's death, but of the silence after her voice and the voice that came after. The sun had barely crested the snow-capped ridge when the blacksmith's hammer stopped mid-swing. Samuel stood by the forge, the heat of the coals brushing his face. But it was not the fire that made his pulse race. It was the notice freshly tacked to the wooden wall behind the man. A wanted poster. Wanted female Apache, descent approximate 25 years escaped detainment near Fort Lell, suspected of aiding resistance and fleeing military custody during childbirth. Last seen heading north with 2 minors. Considered a threat. There was no name, no photograph, but Samuel knew. The blacksmith glanced at him, then back at the poster. Passed through. At dawn, he said almost casually. For soldiers, gray coats, scouts. Samuel's jaw clenched. How far south is Fort LOL? He asked, though he already knew. 3 days hard ride. 2 if they're angry. Samuel turned without another word, mounting his horse before the man could say more. The ride back to the ranch was short, but his thoughts stretched like shadows before dusk. They had found her, or would soon. Back at the barn, Nita was folding the laundry. Ku swaddled at her side. Lena was sweeping dust from the floor into careful piles, humming off key. Samuel dismounted and entered with a storm in his eyes. Nita saw it first. What happened, she asked, rising slowly. He held the paper in his hand. She took it, read it. Silently. Her hands trembled, but she said nothing. It is me, she confirmed. Softly. Samuel did not answer. He stared at the fire at the little boy who had begun to smile when he recognized his footsteps. They are close, he said. Too close. Nita folded the paper, set it down. Then I will leave tonight. Lena stopped sweeping. No, she said. No, Mama. Nita placed a gentle hand on her daughter's head. I must. You are not strong enough, Samuel said. I am strong. Enough to walk. You will freeze. Then I will freeze far from here. I will not bring death to your door. Samuel's fists tightened at his sides. He turned away, pacing, the boards beneath his boots groaning under the weight of what he was thinking. You said once you did not hate me, she said softly. I do not. Then let me go? He spun around. You think that is what I want? To watch you disappear into the dark, into snow and wind, hunted, like an animal. It is better than you being hanged for treason. Samuel's eyes burned. I've already been a coward once, he said, voice low. When Clara died, I stood still. I let rage carry me. Let orders numb me. I did what they said. I never questioned. Not until the blood dried and the crying stopped. Not until I saw what I had become. He stepped toward her slower now. I looked away that day at Bitter Ridge because I could not bear to kill another mother. I let you live, but it was not mercy. It was guilt. Nita's eyes filled with tears she would not let fall. Samuel took a breath. I will not look away. Again. Outside the wind howled like a warning. You stay, he said. You and the children. I will not run. Not this time. Nita reached for his hand, her fingers rough but warm. You will die for me. He shook his head. I will live for you, and I will fight if I have to. She said nothing, but she did not argue. And that night, as they barred the barn door and stoked the stove hotter than ever before, Samuel Holloway sat with his rifle beside the cot, not because he wanted blood, but because he had found something worth protecting, and he would not let the world take it from him. Not again. The night air was bitter, sharp, enough to slice breath in two. The moon hung low and red behind a veil of thin clouds casting long shadows across the frozen hills. Samuel crouched behind a cluster of rocks 100 yards from the army campfire. For tents, 2 horses, tied lazily to a post, a line of gear scattered near a pine tree, rifles, cantons, a compass glinting under moonlight. No more than 6 men, he guessed. Maybe 7. Their voices drifted through the stillness, half drunk and bored. They thought their prey was asleep in the barn. They did not. No, she had already slipped away into the canyons. Or so Samuel hoped they believed. He checked the small flask of kerosene at his side. Just enough. He moved like a shadow, silent, steady, practiced in a way most men forgot after war. First the horses. He crept to the post, whispered to the mare in front. She turned her head, but did not whinny. His hand was calm. He sliced the rope. Bid the second. He slapped both animals hard on the hunch. They bolted into the trees, kicking snow. Shouts erupted in the camp. Samuel ducked, ran low to the edge of the supply tent. He poured a thin line of kerosene along the edge, then backtracked and lit it. The fire caught fast. Men shouted louder now, rifles being cocked, boots hitting frozen dirt. He darted through the trees and doubled back toward the edge of the camp, circling wide to avoid the guards rushing toward the blaze. One man stayed behind, older, slow-moving, checking the gear. Samuel crept behind him, almost past when the man turned suddenly. Holloway. Samuel froze. Recognition flashed in the man's eyes. A scarred face, gray coat. Lieutenant Crowley Bitteridge. Well, I'll be damned, Crowley muttered. They said you vanished, went soft. Samuel said nothing. He lunged. They struggled in. The snow, grunting, fists and elbows flying. Crowley reached for his pistol. Samuel slammed his forearm into the man's throat, pinned him, then drove his fist into the side of Crowley's head. Once, twice, until the man collapsed, limp and silent. Samuel stood breathing hard. He did not wait. He turned and ran for his horse. Within minutes, he was riding hard across the flat land, frost biting his cheeks. His chest ached, but not from exertion. He knew the fire would buy time, but not much. He reached the ranch just before dawn. The snow was untouched at the gate, but the barn door ajar, too quiet. He dismounted, gun drawn. Inside the cot was overturned, the blankets scattered, the stove cold. Footprints, boot prints. Several pairs. Lena's doll lay in the corner, its head cracked. Now he stepped outside. His eyes scanned the trail. Fresh tracks heading north toward the Garrison Road. They had taken them. Samuel fell to one knee, chest heaving. A rage, ancient and red, flared in his gut, but beneath it was something worse. Colder. Failure. He had promised her. He stood slowly, fists clenched. No more waiting. No more ghosts. No more watching from the sidelines while the world ripped itself to pieces. He looked at the horizon where the first edge of dawn bled into the snow. Then he turned, saddled his horse again, and rode. This time not to distract, this time to take them back. The wind screamed through the canyon like a hunted animal. Samuel leaned low over his horse's neck, snow stinging his eyes, breath tight in his chest. The trail of hoofprints ahead was still fresh. 5, maybe 6 riders, heavy. Tracks from a wagon in the center. They had taken Nita and the children by cart. He pushed the horse harder. By the time he reached the lower valley, dusk was bleeding into the snow. Far ahead, a column of smoke curled above the Pine Ridge campfire. He slowed, dismounted, and tied the reins near a rock outcrop. His limbs ached, his ribs throbbed from the fight with Crowley, but he moved like a man who felt nothing but purpose. He crept forward, rifle in hand. The soldiers were camped near the frozen stream. Nitida sat bound near the wagon, her head low. Lena huddled beside her, clutching the baby beneath a wool cloak. 2 guards paced. One laughed at something. Another poked the fire. Samuel scanned the shadows. Then he moved, silent as fallen ash. He flanked the camp and fired a warning shot into the trees. Chaos erupted. "Get up, one!" Guard shouted. Samuel burst from behind the wagon, rifle raised. "Hands up, one!" Soldier reached for his gun. Samuel shot near his feet. "I said, drop it." They hesitated. Then came a voice. "Samuel." He froze. From behind the fire stepped a man in gray, younger than Crowley, but older than fear. Sergeant Ellis. They had trained together at Fort Logan. He had stood beside Samuel at Red Creek. He had watched Clara's coffin lower into the ground. "You," Ellis said, stunned. "You're protecting her. Let them go." Samuel said, "No one else needs to die tonight." Ellis shook his head slowly. "You are out of your mind. She has done nothing wrong. She is an escaped prisoner. She is a mother." Ellis lifted his pistol. "I cannot let you do this." Samuel raised his rifle. For a moment, neither breathed. Then a shot rang out. Samuel's shoulder jerked back. Pain exploded through his chest. He stumbled, fell to one knee. Lena screamed. Nita tried to rise, but the ropes held her down. Samuel fired once, missed. Ellis ducked behind the wagon. Samuel crawled forward, blood soaking through his coat. Another shot. Snow burst beside his leg. Then Nitida was there, pulling at her. Restraints, teeth clenched. Lena used her small hands to untie the last knot. Ku cried. "Samuel!" Nitida shouted. He looked up, eyes clouded. Go, he gasped. Take him. Run. No need to go. But she grabbed his arm, slung it over her shoulder. I will not leave you. Get up. I cannot you. He staggered to his feet. Ella shouted again. Stop. But Nidida had already thrown him onto the horse. Climbed behind, pulled Lena up with one arm, CO cradled in the other. She kicked hard, and the horse bolted. Bullets chased them through the trees. Samuel clung to the reins, his breath ragged. They cleared the ridge. Head the river. Wide, shallow, and frozen in places. And beyond it, Mexico faster, Nita cried. Behind them, hooves thundered. Ellis was still coming. They hit the riverbed. Ice cracked beneath them, but held. The horse slipped once, regained footing. Then snow, open, flat land. No more shots. No more shouting, just wind. They crossed Mexico. Nidida pulled back the reins, the horse slowing to a lurching. Stop. Samuel slid off, crumpling to the ground. She dropped beside him. Stay awake, she begged. Please. I told you to leave me, he murmured. She pressed her forehead to his. And I told you I will not. Lena cried quietly. CO whimpered. Samuel opened his eyes, saw the stars above them, endless, free. Then he smiled. They had made it together. 1 year later, the hills of Sonora swayed gold under the sun, rows of corn stretching toward the horizon in proud swaying lines. The air was warm, fragrant with earth and wild flowers, a far cry from the snows of Wyoming. Here the wind did not carry gunshots. It carried the laughter of children, the creak of carts, the hum of a life rebuilt. Samuel Holloway, now calling himself Mateo Sandville, stood in the field, sweat darkening the collar of his shirt as he hoed the rows in slow, steady rhythm. His back ached, but it was the ache of purpose. Nearby, Koo toddled between rows, chasing a butterfly on unsteady legs, while Lena watched from a blanket in the shade, a book open in her lap. From the schoolhouse down the path came the sound of a familiar voice. Her tone was gentle but firm, instructing a group of village children how to form letters in both Spanish and Apache. Her dress was plain, her hair pinned back beneath a scarf, but her presence filled the building like light through glass. Every now and then she would look up toward the field, and Samuel would feel it, something quiet, something settled, something like peace. Later that afternoon, after the last of the corn was watered and the tools put away, Samuel sat on the porch of their small adobe home, a letter in his lap. The envelope was worn. The ink faded. He had written it months ago, but never sent it. There was no address. It was for Clara. He opened it slowly, reading the words once more. Clara, you always knew the part of me that I tried to hide. You knew the good and the stubborn and the scarred, and you loved me anyway. For a long time after you died, I thought love was something buried with you, that nothing else would ever grow again. Where grief had burned, I was wrong. I met a woman with eyes full of fire and a heart too heavy to carry. Alone. She lost as much as I did, maybe more. And somehow we found a way to carry each other. I did not plan to love her. I did not want to, but I did. And I do. She did not replace you, Clara. No one could. But she gave me something I thought I had lost forever. Hope. You were my first. She may be my last, but only because you taught me how to love. Samuel folded the letter carefully, placed it in a wooden box, and slid it beneath the floorboard where he kept his rifle, the one he no longer reached for each morning. Behind him, the door creaked open. Nidida stepped out barefoot, her hands dusted with flour. Supper's almost ready, she said. He nodded. Smells like beans again, she grinned. Beans and tortillas. It is what the land gives us. He took her hand, kissed her knuckles. The land gives more than food. She sat beside him, resting her head on his shoulder. Below the porch, Koo chased a rooster through the garden. Lena giggled, calling out for him to be gentle. The sky above them burned orange, the sun sinking behind. The hills like a tired king. Nita whispered something in Apache. "What does it mean?" Samuel asked. She smiled. "It means this place, this moment is enough." He wrapped an arm around her. And as the shadows grew long and the air turned cool, a lullaby rose from the porch, soft, warm, full of new beginnings. It was not Clarara's voice, not Nita's alone. It was something they had built together from ashes and blood. And second chances. A love not born of forgetting, but of remembering and choosing again and again to begin. Some stories end with a kiss, others with a gunshot. But this one ends with a whisper of love that outlived war, of names traded for safety, and of hearts that chose healing over hatred. Samuel, Holloway, and Nita never made the history books. But somewhere in the dust of Sonora, under fields of golden corn, their children ran barefoot, free, and their love endured quietly, stubbornly, beautifully. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that even the most wounded hearts can find their way home, then join us. Subscribe to Wild West Love Stories for more tales of passion, sacrifice, and redemption from the untamed American frontier, where bullets missed but hearts never did.